Hello everyone, Ember here, and welcome back to a new video. I would like to first of all say, sorry, I guess, that this set review had to be split into two different videos, but basically I've recently had complications with internet and recording, so yeah, that's basically just why these had to be two separate videos. Also, I don't think anyone wants to sit through a 40-50 minute long set review, so yeah. So it's going to be for the Future Flash set, so we can just get started. There is a Masquerin line. Has the attack Daunting Eyes, flip a coin to get tails. For each heads, shuffle an energy attached to your opponent's active into their deck. Yep, just a pretty bad effect, sadly. If this was discard, then of course that'd be a lot better, but sadly shuffling in energy is just not great because your opponent will be able to reuse those resources. So you're effectively just slowing your opponent down and not really doing anything else. Then we actually see a new orbital line. The evolving basics and stage 1 don't really do anything. But the stage 2 orbital has a pretty interesting and unique attack in the form of satellite beam. Does 30 damage for each energy in your opponent's discard pile, which is pretty cool, to be honest. But it's a bit weak and a bit strange because, to be honest, like your opponent, if they have a lot of energy in the discard pile, they're going to be able to recover it with stuff like Super Rod. And if they're playing something like Goldengo or Chien-Pao, then they have superior energy retrieval. So yeah, it's a bit of a strangely designed card. It's a shame because I really like the artwork on this Obito. I think it's amazing, but sadly I think Satellite Beam is just too niche of an attack to be good, which is a shame. But yeah, moving on. We have a Toadschool, which can basically just serve as a bit of an upgrade to Toadschool EX, allowing you to accelerate energy to one of your benched Toadschool, basically, which is nice. Then we actually have a new Toadschool, which has the ability Mycelium Colony. It says cards in your opponent's discard pile can't be put into hand through the effects of trainer cards or abilities. So they can't use stuff like superior energy retrieval. So I guess maybe this could be a partner for the Masquerin. No, sorry, the Orbital, but that still seems kind of weak because they would need to have a lot of energy in their discard pile for you to do a lot of damage, but maybe that's a way of making Orbital work. Still a kind of restrictive ability and, nothing too crazy, I would say. Then we actually see probably the best grass type in the set, at least for GLC, Wu Qian. First attack is just decent acceleration, but the second attack for 3 grass and a cause, so that's just 2 Rillabooms or Charm, does 140, and then during your opponent's next turn, the defending Pokemon's attacks cost 2 colors more, which is super disruptive in GLC. So, stuff like Galarian Weezing that's only attacking for 1 energy now costs 3 energy to use, so yeah, I think this card is pretty disruptive. It's pretty decent. It's doing a large chunk of damage, carrying some Pokemon, and to it carrying everything else. So yeah, seems like a great addition for GLC. Then we see the Simsear. Banseer, of course, having the Coffer family move, which is nice. But then Simsear has the same Monkey Trio ability that we looked at in the last video. Basically says if you have all the monkeys in play, you get to ignore all the colors in the attack cost. So Heat Tackle, instead of costing 4 energy, just costs a single fire energy. And it does do 190, which is a really nice chunk of damage. 30 to yourself is a bit like, whatever. I guess the Koffagrigus EX is a bit of a pain, but I don't think that's seeing massive amount of play anyway, so yeah, I don't think that's anything really to worry about. 190 is actually a decent amount as well to hit the damage rise, because you can swing to like a Chien-Pao for 190 and then finish them off with a Pampor, I think it's called. Is it called Pampor or like Simpor or something? I think it might be Simpor actually, the water type that actually does a lot of spread damage. So, there's at least decent synergy there. So 190, yeah, seems like a lot of damage to hit for. Then we see an Iron Moth, one of my favorite Paradox Pokemon actually, which is a future type as well. Has the ability Thermal Reactor. Once in your turn, when this Pokemon moves from the bench to the active spot, you can move any amount of energy, fire energy, from your other Pokemon to it. And then Heat Rays, just very vanilla. 2 fire colors, 120, can't use it next turn. So a pretty decent attacker actually in stuff like Skeletorge and Charizard in the late game. Maybe you don't want your opponent to kill with Charizard and win the game or something, so this is probably good in situations where both players are down to 2 prize cards, so like you finish something off to take a second last prize card or something with Iron Moth, and then your opponent has to like boss around it to win the game. So I do think this has some decent applications. You can obviously scale the damage up to 180 with Skeletorge, which is nice, but yeah, it seems kind of niche, but still a pretty usable card. Also worth mentioning is actually the future boost capsule that will give this thing free retreat and also let it do 140. So yeah, just something worth bearing in mind. Then we see a very adorable Feebas. I honestly love the artwork in this set. I think it's some of the best artwork in a set that we've seen in quite a while, actually. But yeah, just amazing Feebas artwork. Milotic is, I think, an Echoing Horn, but when you evolve it. So yeah, so you have to do it as well. So each player puts a basic Pokemon. So you could view this as a good thing if you just need more Pokemon to play. But this is mainly for, forcing your opponent to bench something else. So it's kind of like an Echoing Horn. In all honesty, I don't think it's super great. Maybe we'll get like a Milotic EX. It's really good, but yeah, I don't think that's super great as of right now. Then we do see the Simipour, or Simipour, has the same ability as before, Monkey Trio, and the attack Shower with Insults, very rude Pokemon, does 50 damage and then 30 damage to each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So it's actually really nice because we did mention earlier that the Simsear does 190 and then 190 plus 30. You're doing a decent amount of damage against stuff like Chien-Pao and Miraidon, and it'll allow you to just finish off some Pokemon that you wouldn't be able to KO anyway. So I do like that about this card. Definitely Simsage, or not Simsage. Simsear definitely seems like the best Pokemon to use, but Simipour doesn't seem terrible either. Then we have probably my favorite evolution line. I'm just joking. It's not like a great evolution line, but it's a funny evolution line, to say the least. Like Vanillix over here says your opponent's Pokemon that have 40 HP or less remaining can't attack. And we have seen that Turtwig in the Ancient Roar video, which basically shrinks your opponent's, one of your opponent's Pokemon down to 30 HP. And so this Vanillix basically just says that something with 40 or less HP can't attack, which is obviously like a really good partner for that. So very fun combo. You could obviously do this with like Claydol or Lone Raticate if you really wanted to, but I mean, you're already playing like Irida and Rare Candy and stuff for the Tuscarena deck, so I think Vanillix just makes more sense with them. But yeah, just my 2 cents. Could be a very funny deck. Then we see Iron Bundle, which has the same, buffs as the other featured Pokemon, so you can give it free retreat plus 20 damage. But realistically, you're just using this for the ability Hyperblower. So you can switch out your opponent's active to their bench. So do you choose this? You may switch out your opponent's... Okay, so no, your opponent chooses. Oh, that's a bit worse. I thought this was maybe you choose, which would have been so much better, but sadly no. Your opponent chooses their new active Pokemon, but if you do, discard this one and all the cards attached to it. So it's a bit unfortunate, but, could be useful in some niche situations. Then we also have a Chien-Pao, which is just like a GLC card, really, but there's just so many good water-type basics in GLC, like the Veluza that we looked at in the last video, so I doubt this Chien-Pao will see much use in GLC. Bit of a shame, but then we also see this Elekid, I think its name is, Elekid. It's been so long since I've seen one of these in the card game. I can't remember when actually the last time this guy got a card, but has the attack Crackling Shot for 0 energy, just like all the other baby Pokemon. Does 30 damage to your opponent's Pokemon, and then it also has free retreat. So nice, I guess. It's decent. It's not like the worst thing in the world. It's obviously pretty good in maybe smaller Pokemon formats and custom events, but as for standard, probably not very good. I don't think there's many applications for this. Maybe if we ever get some more dedicated Lightning support, like Lightning Pokemon Search or something, it's decent because it's a pivot, but yeah, I don't think it's super great. 30 to 1 is just a bit weak, but yeah, maybe in GLC or something. And we see probably my favorite artwork in the set, not including the Blitzel, I should say, but the background is amazing. So lovely artwork on the Blitzel. And we also have Zebstrika with Burst of Braying, which on paper sounds like a good attack, but it's sadly not very good. Choose a basic Lightning Energy card from your discard pile up to no price cards your opponent has already taken, and attach them to your Pokemon any way you like. So if your opponent's taken 2 price cards, you get to attach 2 energy. If you've taken 3, you get to accelerate 3. So the most you'll ever accelerate in a game with this is probably 4 or 5, because realistically, if you're accelerating like 5 energy in the late game, you probably just cares this to win the game. So yeah, it's a bit weak. You're waiting till like the late game to accelerate energy. Just seems kind of bad, to be honest. Like even in something like Raichu, Fluffy just seems so much better. Maybe post rotation. Actually, Raichu doesn't survive rotation, I don't think. Does it survive? Yeah, Raichu survives. No, Raichu is Bryn Stars. So yeah, Raichu should survive rotation, I think. I'll have to double check that, but maybe this is a lightning type option post rotation, but I don't think it's that good, to be honest. We do see a Toxel, and then a Toxtricity EX is fighting type, so that's why it's not shown here. Then we have Iron Hands EX, the one card that everyone seems to be talking about. It seems like everyone was under the impression that this card is kind of bonkers and might ruin the game or something. Over on Twitter, it's getting really crazy. But in all honesty, I don't think this card is nearly as offensive as ADP or Sableye, but we'll have to remain and see. Right, Iron Hands has some really good stats. It's 230 HP basic, so it's already pretty tanky and hard to KO. Has two pretty good attacks actually. Arm Pressed is 160 for Lightning Colorless, which is still pretty solid, you know, in a Miraidon deck that's still pretty efficient damage, especially if you can't use the attack amp you very much, which is just an hilarious translation. Hope it sticks. For one Lightning, 3 colors, does 120, which remember can be modified by the booster capsule for future to do plus 20 damage and give Iron Hands free retreat, which is fantastic. So 120 or 140. And if your opponent's active Pokemon is knocked out, you take another prize card. So very strong against stuff like Lost Zone, any kind of single prize deck really, KO stuff like Greninja. Pretty solid overall, KO Luminion. Yeah, seems pretty solid, but how are you getting the energy on there? Because even in like a Flaffy deck, you still have to hit like what, Generator 2 Flaffy or Generator Flaffy manual attachment. Might be better in Lost Zone potentially, but you'd still have to hit like manual Raihan plus Mirage Gate or double Mirage Gate or, you know, like manual over 2 turns then Mirage Gate. It just seems a bit convoluted in a lot of decks. Like I thought about maybe with Iron Valiant and like Xatu or something, but even then that's running 2 different basic energy. It's running Lightning and Psychic Energy. Seems a bit awkward. You know, like Charizard might be the best application for this, funnily enough, but just because Charizard's so hyper consistent anyway, but yeah, I'm mixed feelings on this card. I think it could be really good, but at the same time, it is 4 energy. Like, we do have to bear that in mind. So, yeah, I'd like to see what people can come up with this to make it good, but it'll be fun to experiment at the very least. But yeah, seems like a good card, but nowhere near as scary as people say. There's also a Chimecho, but apparently this Chimecho is getting cut from the set. Not that it matters because it's a terrible card. Then we'd see my favorite evolution line of all time, actually, Pumpkaboo and Gourgeist. Pumpkaboo, lovely artwork as always, same for Gourgeist. Has the ability Startling Pumpkin, which is a fantastic name for an attack. Ability, rather. Says if his Pokemon is knocked out, then your opponent discards 2 random cards from their hand. So, really nice ability to have. Like, the attack is nothing crazy, but the ability is nice. There's also a tool card that we'll see at the end here that says if this Pokemon gets KO'd, you discard another random card. So you can discard up to 3, which is pretty decent in the late game Ionos as well as Judge, but at the same time, you know, by the time that ever becomes relevant, I should say, your opponent's probably set up already, and 100 damage obviously isn't great. Maybe in some kind of Zora control deck or funky GLC control deck, this could be good, but in all honesty, yeah, maybe in like a single prize Paradox Rift format. I think that'd be really fun actually to try and do a single prize event for Paradox Rift, but yeah, this Pokemon's sadly not very good. If this was 3 cards, then maybe, but yeah. It's a shame because I love Gourgeist, but not a very good card. Then we see a bunch of new Flittles, and an Espathra. Espathra has the ability Stance. It says when you evolve it, it's basically immune to all damage, which is, yeah, it's pretty solid actually. The attack, Glittering Eyes, does 70, and if you have Tulip in your discard, does 70 more. So like 140 if you play a Tulip. Tulip's not great though. It just retrieves Psychic Pokemon and basic Psychic Energy from the discard pile, so yeah, I'm not like wild on this card. Even in GLC, it's a bit awkward because you have to find your one-off Tulip. But yeah, again, maybe in a single prize Paradox Rift only tournament, it could be good. But yeah, I'm not seeing it for standard, sadly. And we see even more Tinkatinks because this is Pokemon's new favorite. Apparently, it's just in so many sets now. 3, wait, is that 3? No, okay, 2 Tinkatinks and a Tinkatuff and a Tinkaton. And this Tinkaton is just hilariously bad because one Psychic Energy does 60, but if it has a Metal, it does 120 more. So it does 180 for a Psychic and a Metal. Bear that in mind because there's already a Tinkaton in Standard that has an attack for Psychic Colors that does 90 and then 90 more if it has a Special Energy attached to it. So why does this exist? Also, that Tinkaton says you can discard a card from your hand to draw 3 once a turn. Doesn't make any sense. I don't know why they printed this. It's just strange. Like, why not do it for a different Pokemon or something? But yeah, just seems really weird. But yeah, we have an actually good card to talk about now, which is Iron Valiant, a very, very scary Pokemon and on a lot of people's radar. The ability Attack in Bits, when it moves from the bench to active, allows you to place 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. Phenomenal ability. Phenomenal. Very scary. Laser Blade for 2 psychic colors, does 200 damage, and during next turn this Pokemon can't attack. Which, this is basically the exact same attack that was on the Sandy Shocks, is it? Like the Magneton one, which I said then was terrible. And this attack, fair enough, is terrible, but the thing is, when you're placing 2 damage counters, this is obviously going to stack up eventually, to the point where you can actually start carrying V-Stars and other EX Pokemon with Laser Blade. So you have to kind of bear that in mind with this card. You also have the fact that Future Boost Capsule will give this guy free retreat, so you can bounce between them, while also increasing your damage by plus 20. So you can do 220 base and then 2 damage counters. So it'll be very easy to KO stuff like Chien-Pao, Miraidons, Raichu Vs, like low HP Pokemon. And then in the late game, you should have enough damage counters on the board to start carrying stuff like Charizard. So a very scary card overall, to be honest. Like, very scary. You could also pair this up with like Iron Jugulas, so the one that does 50 damage to 3 Pokemon that already have damage counters on them. So like, that just naturally great synergy. And that's also a future card. So yeah, big fan of Iron Valiant. Looking forward to trying it out. Then we see an Onix, not doing anything, but there is a Steelix later on, so that's why that's there. And we have the Toxtricity X to go with the Toxel from earlier. I've seen this card get a lot of slack online, which I think is a bit unfair, really. It's not terrible. 70 damage for 2 Lightning Energy, discard top card your opponent's deck. It's not awful. Gaia Punch does 270 for 3 Lightning, and you discard 3 Lightning Energy from your Pokemon in play. Pretty solid. I've seen a lot of people say that this is just like way worse Raichu, and it is to a point. But the thing is, this is a lot more tankier than Raichu, and I think that's important to bear in mind. So yeah, Raichu can have like Charm of Courage and stuff, but I do like this card a lot. I think this could be good with Flaffy. It's not like crazy good or anything, but this is certainly like the best Toxtricity we have in Standard. So yeah, I would definitely say this is worth experimenting with maybe. It's nothing crazy, but 270 is a lot. Just saying. Like, it's a lot of damage to throw out. So yeah. We also have the Steelix, which is pretty sad. I feel a bit sorry for Steelix. Obviously has one of these ridiculously expensive attacks as always. But then Earthquake for single Meta Energy, just 130, which sounds great on paper, but it's not really a lot of damage these days. And then it also does 30 damage to each of your own bench Pokemon, which is, of course, pretty bad. Now, there is actually Durant, funny enough, which does have the attack Swarming Rage that allows you to do 20 for each damage counter on all of your Durant. So, assuming you've done this twice, and you have 4 Durant in play, your Durants will be able to swing for 240 or 220 if you're using double turbo to pay for Swarming Rage. So there is at least a deck here, but it's probably not a very good deck, to be fair, because as soon as your opponent starts carrying Durants, then you're going to lose a lot of momentum. Obviously, at some points you can come back to Steelix and attack with him in the late game, but yeah, it just seems very convoluted, nothing too crazy. Maybe we get like Max Potion or something, but even then, 108 HP just really isn't that great. Like in the Sun and Moon era, this would have been pretty good with stuff like Max Potion, but it's just nowhere near as good because it's just getting KO'd by everything. So yeah, bit of a shame, but also there is actually a Miltank we can look at later on that might be better synergy with Steelix, which is funny, but yeah, it's not great synergy. Durant, however, I might try and make a funny donk deck with like Gape Draw Bog and stuff if I'm able to pull 4 of these. I'm not going to craft any because it's just a terrible card, but if I pull all 4, then I'll do a crazy donk deck or something. Try and do that for YouTube, be funny. But yeah, moving on, we have another Aegislash line to complement the Aegislash that came out in Raging Surf. So that was the Aegislash that was immune to damage from both EX and V Pokemon. So this one has 330 HP, and it has 2 attacks. Double Edge Slash, we've seen this kind of move before. I think this is like Pulse Launcher on Magnezone EX. And then Peerless Edge does 70 damage for each prize card you have taken, which scales quite high in the late game, to be honest. Like, after you've taken 2 prize cards, you're doing 140. That's not terrible, but 3 prize cards, you're doing 210. So then at, 4 prize cards, you're doing 280. It's not terrible. Like, it's not terrible at all, especially when you, like, boss. You can just boss Pidgeot at that point for game, so yeah, it's not awful, actually. I kind of like this card. It's maybe like you need to actually take prize cards before using this, which is a bit awkward. So like, what are you using to attack aside from this? Well, you're probably just using like the single prize Aegislash, which is annoying to deal with anyway. So yeah, it's not awful, actually. I'm a bit torn on what to feel about this Aegislash. It seems kind of cool, but I can see why people think it's a bit bad. But yeah, maybe a nice one-off in the Aegislash deck. Then we have Altaria EX, another surprisingly low HP Pokemon. There's a lot of Pokemon. There's actually a lot of Pokemon in this set that are kind of like a bit on the weak side HP wise, but maybe they're deliberately trying to tune them down a bit. Maybe has the ability Humming Heal, which says once in your turn you may heal 20 damage from each of your Pokemon. And then Light Pulse for Water Metal does 140, and during next turn prevent all effects of attacks from your opponent's Pokemon done to this Pokemon. So like poison, basically, special conditions, stuff that would discard energy. But healing 20 from everything isn't that good. Even if you have like 4 of these in play, which is kind of unlikely. The thing is, with this attack, well, this ability rather, it's great against spread decks, but the majority of standard decks are just punching you so hard anyway, for like 180 or 190, then healing even 80 damage a turn isn't strictly going to be very good. Like, even if it's from all of your Pokemon, it sounds great on paper, but realistically, if your opponent is going to keep punching you for these massive amounts of damage, then healing 80 damage isn't really going to do a lot, which is a shame to think about. But yeah, hopefully Altaria is better than I think it is, but sadly, I'm not really seeing it for this Altaria, sadly. We have a Tatsugiri, which I think is it's one of the only Dragon Pokemon in Paradox Rift, it seems. For 2 Colorless Energy, Survival Strategy, search your deck for 2 cards, put them in your hand, and then you can switch this when you're benched. It's fine, it's alright. I don't think this makes Dondozo any better, which is a shame, but yeah, it's okay. It's not the worst. Maybe in Control and like GLC, but yeah, I'm not sure. Because Control already has like a Calyrex that does the exact same thing. Admittedly, you don't get to switch it with your bench, but it's okay. If any of you out there who play Control, can you let me know if this is actually a good card or not? Because I don't feel it's a very good card, but some people think it is. So yeah, I'd like to know what Control players think of this card. Next up with those, we have the Porygon Z, which has the ability Bug Turbo. It says, once in your turn, you can flip a coin. If heads, you may choose up to 4 basic energy cards from discard pile. So it can be any energy, which is nice. They have to be basic. And you get to attach them to Porygon Z. If you get Tails, though, you have to discard an energy from this Pokemon. Now, notice you don't have to have an energy attached in order to use this ability. So, going first, on the second turn of your game, when you rare candy up to Porygon, basically just don't manually attach, and then you can just use this ability, and then if you get heads, then that's great. If tails, you don't lose anything. So, just avoid manually attaching, basically. And then if you survive a hit or something, or you KO your opponent's main attacker somehow, because you're probably not even doing that much damage, but say you KO them for argument's sake, then maybe you can get 4 more energy in the discard pile or something and attach, 8 energy or something and do a massive KO. So I think this deck could be really fun. There's also like the Kingdra that we looked at, I think in the last video, that does a whole bunch of damage for every energy that you discard from the top of your deck or something. But then it puts those energy in the discard pile for you. So it could be a decent attacker in that. There's also the Battle Styles Kingdra, which will conserve all your energy. I know spoilers for future videos, but yeah, just some fun ideas for this Porygon Z. Could be quite fun. Then we see an Ambipom, which is not very good, sadly. I'm sorry, guys. It's just not very good. Next up, though, we have Miltank with Lively Tackle. 60 if this Pokemon was healed during this turn, just attacks 90 more. Unironically, I think this is actually better than Durant because, right, hear me out. Yes, you're only doing like, 150, 130 with a double turbo. But to be honest, I think this is much easier to work with than the Durant with Steelix, because if you use like Steelix, you could just use Potion or something, or Lucky Pops to heal the damage off Miltank. You could also use stuff like Gape Drill Bog and then use potions afterwards. I don't know, this seems kind of fun. It's probably nothing great. It's definitely like a Durant Miltank meme deck with double turbos and stuff, but I don't know. It could be a fun Miltank to mess around with. Then we have the Swablu to go with Altaria earlier. And then we have the Mousehold EX line coming to the end of the Pokemon section, which, in all honesty, I know some people have like been raving about this card. I really don't see it, to be honest. Like, I just don't. I can't get behind this, even with like Zoroark to work with. I just don't see it. Like, 230 HP is so low, and you're only doing 120 with the attack anyway. The free retreat is nice, and the ability will help you KO like weak Pokemon, but I just really don't see it for this card. I don't know. I'm assuming there'll be a lot of great, very entertaining videos about silly players attacking into this when they shouldn't and stuff, but Yeah, it's going to be fun content, but I'm probably not going to play this. Sorry, it's just not very good. Iron Jugless, however, I will defend. This is probably my favorite card in the set, funny enough, which is a bit strange, but yeah, it's definitely my favorite. 3 colorless energy does 50 to 3 of your opponent's Pokemon that already have any damage on them. So you have to pair this up with stuff like the Tachyon Bits, Iron Valiant. You could also pair this up actually with like Radiant Greninja and Sableye stuff, so maybe there's Blossom potential. I do have some other ideas, but I don't want to spoil them just yet because they're videos, so not going to spoil all the content. But yeah, definitely a few applications for this first attack, and then Baryon Beam for 5 colorless energy, which is very expensive. Does 150, but if it has a future boost energy capsule, this attacks cost 3 colorless instead. And the capsule increases your damage by plus 20 while also giving you free retreat. So essentially becomes 3 colorless energy to do 170 and also free retreat. So seems like a very efficient Pokemon overall, and one that I'm looking forward to experimenting with. Then we also see Counter Catcher, because all the trainers are worth talking about. And yeah, Counter Catcher is fantastic. It's around, well, it was around in the Sun and Moon era. Fantastic card. I think all the gold versions online are probably sold out already, but phenomenal card. I was actually putting together a video, top 10 cards I want to see reprinted. Counter Catcher was on that list, really high up actually. I think it was 4th place. So very glad this is coming back. There isn't much more to say about this. It just means that a lot of decks will be able to play Iono and Counter Catcher in the same turn, not just choose between boss or draw cards. So fantastic choice building in decks, basically. I think this is an easy 1 of or 2 of in a lot of decks. So great to see. We also see Techno Radar, an absolutely bonkers card. You must discard a card from your hand in order to use this card. Don't care, it's often better than not having to discard cards, funny enough. Search your deck for 2 future Pokemon, reveal them, put them into your hand. So, like Iron Jugless, Iron Valiant, Iron Hands, if you're building around all those Pokemon. So, just seems like a very solid card, to be honest. I'm looking forward to experimenting with this. This is easily like a 4 of in a lot of decks, so should be good. Then we have Cursed Duster, which is a tool card we mentioned being good with Gourgeist. If something gets KO'd, then you get to discard a random card from your opponent's hand. It's a decent effect. It's obviously much better with Gourgeist than anything else, really. I don't think there's anything too great. You could maybe pair this with Revroom, actually, and then judge your opponent down to 4. So, like, if they play any cards in their hand and then knock out Revroom, then they have to discard 4 cards from their hand or something weird. Like, maybe there's something there, but yeah, I'm sure a lot of people have probably already given up on Revroom EX by now, but yeah, just something funny to bear in mind. Then we have Future Boost Energy Capsule, which is the tool version of Ancient Capsule. This is significantly better than the Ancient one, to say the least, but grants free retreat, so Float Stone, and increases damage by plus 20, so Muscle Band. A phenomenal card, and we'll see play in all future decks. Just absolutely busted, 10 out of 10. I wouldn't be surprised if this ends up being like a 7 or 8 quid card, honestly. It's going to be ridiculous, but... Then we have Technical Machine Evolution to complement Devolution that was in the Ancient set. So Evolution allows you to choose up to 2 of your bench Pokemon and search your deck for cards that evolve in those Pokemon. And I wrote a comment on a video where I mentioned like this could be really good for stuff like Meowscarada, and of course someone replied saying Meowscarada will still be trash. And in all honesty, my response to that is okay, whatever. I'm more likely to be happy about cards that improve current decks than point off all the reasons why this just isn't good enough for Standard. I'd rather experiment with these kind of cards in Standard and GLC and Expanded than sit here and tell you how crap this card is, because at the end of the day, we all know that this probably isn't going to help decks that much. It might, but it might not. There's a good chance it just doesn't. But at the very least, we can have fun experimenting and trying to make stuff work. And, there's a large negative side of YouTube. And I know I've been very negative in the past and I'm like trying to shake it off right now. But, it's just like, I want to make stuff work. And this is the kind of card that will help make stuff work. So hopefully you can see what I'm saying there. Then we also have Rock. What's his name? Rock. Okay. Looking female or male, I don't know. Male, I guess. Who cares? Draw 2 cards, put a basic energy from your hand, from your discard pile into your hand. That's pretty decent. Actually, it's not the worst in Goldengo, but you'd probably rather just play Avery, so if you're drawing cards, but yeah. Draw 2, retrieve an energy. Yeah, it's whatever. And we have a very small image. I don't know why some of these images are really small, but Professor's Tour Scenario, Probably one of the better supporters. It's also a future supporter, which is interesting because it doesn't interact with future Pokemon necessarily, but put one of your Pokemon into your hand, discard all cards attached to it. So it's basically just an easy reprint. Still a really good card though. You can move stuff like Hawlucha to reset it. You could remove Luminion so it doesn't get boss KO'd. You could like pick up Iron Valiant if you really wanted to and use another one. So some fun applications to this card, certainly pretty decent. And then we have Tulip, which I think I said put 5 in any combination, but no, it's put 4, so even worse. Just not a very good card, but yeah. Also, there was some cards that were listed down here that getting cut from Paradox Rift, but yeah, it's been Outpower. Thank you for watching. Sorry again that these had to be 2 different videos, just length and time-wise and busy life, but yeah, thank you for watching. Let me know what you think down below.